former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. How are you, sir?
I'm doing very well, and getting ready for Thanksgiving. I hope you are, too.
We have a lot to be thankful for, because I don't think this would be as thankful a year if Hillary won. I think I'd be depressed.
Oh, I agree. Every group I talk to, I say, raise your hand if you're happier now than you would have been with another
Exactly.
outcome.
I did that in a speech that I gave earlier this week. It is amazing how elections have such a profound impact, but then they come to an end, and then the part of governing begins. You were recently spotted going into Trump Tower yourself. Is there any role to which you are being considered? You said you don't want a cabinet position.
Well, we had a very, very good talk with Clifton and I both went up to see the president-elect, and as you remember, she and I first had breakfast with him talking about running back in January of 2015. So we had watched this whole thing evolve with fascination and with great hope for him, and he certainly lived up to it. So this was really a chance to catch up, and my goal, which I'll explain at greater length in some newsletters in the near future. Look, we now have over 4,100 state legislators, the most in the history of the Republican Party. We have 34 governors, which I think ties one of the high water marks. We control the Senate. We control the House. The new president will have 4,000 appointees. And somehow somebody's got to think about a very simple question. What do we have to do so in January of 2025 we are swearing in the next Republican president, because at every level, from state and local to federal, the Republican Party has met the American people's needs for a better future, a better economy, a better way of life, greater hope for their kids. And so what I want to work on, and you were with me back when we did this in the Contract with America days, through GOPAC and other instruments.
By the way, even before that was
the entire party.
Well, it was predicated on a series that you did called Renewing American Civilization.
Right.
I think in many ways we're going back to those fundamentals, aren't we?
I think we are, and that's why as I looked at it about 6 or 8 months ago, it occurred to me that I may even go back and reteach a course like that, because things as simple, and this is where we're so different from the left. I mean, we really believe in the work ethic. We really believe you should encourage people to maximize their capabilities, not to maximize their dependency. I mean, there are a number of really fundamental questions. And if you have a party which now has literally controls the legislature and the governorship in 25 states, you're in a position to have really big impact, not just in the White House, but across the whole system. But to do that, you've got to build a common cause and a common language and move the culture, because as you know, one of our greatest problems is the college campuses and the culture of the news media, and the people who really do have a fundamentally different belief system than the folks who won the election this year.
You know, one of the fundamental ways, I mean, I really loved what happened yesterday, because all of these network executives went in and met with Mr. Trump, and by all public accounts, Donald Trump dressed them down as being abusively biased in this campaign. You know, do we really need a press office set up like every prior president in the day and age of social media and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram? Or can he communicate directly with the American people? I would argue maybe those ridiculous press conferences could come to an end once and for all.
Well, I think they ought to rethink the whole notion of who they accredit. I mean, you live in an age when, a company like Sinclair that covers 40% of the country with local television news, when you have, as you point out, between Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and a dozen other devices, you can reach the American people again and again. You can stream your own town hall meetings. You can do lots of things nobody's ever thought of before. You could have press conferences for the American people and allow people to ask you questions rather than reporters. I mean, I think, and frankly, the depth of bias and hostility and dishonesty has not abated for one instant. It is amazing to me that the New York Times and the Washington Post are as wrong today in covering the transition as they were earlier in covering the campaign. And a lot of it's just pure bias. They don't want to understand what's going on, and they don't believe in it. And, I think we have to take this head on.
Well, I think he did, and I think he went straight at him, and I actually talked to people in the meeting, and they said he went at them hard. Even Martha Raddatz. I mean, she moderated one of the debates, and she was crying on election night that he won. I mean, that is Look, I said in 2008, I stand by it, and I think now it's actually been proven through WikiLeaks, journalism's dead. The mainstream media is corrupt. They colluded with the Clintons. It's now been proven. They are advocates. They're not a news organization anymore. CNN is not a news organization. Nor is NBC.
And I think that the Trump team should rethink for every single federal agency. Why would you go back and have the same people accredited, having the same people with the same biases? I think we ought to take a deep look at this and really ask some profound questions. And maybe it's time for a whole different setup.
One of the things I keep saying is that Trump really has one mission. And I know he's building his team now, and that's a big part of the mission, but just keep the promises. And the promises are extreme vetting and building the wall and education back to the states and repatriation and energy independence and health savings accounts. You do all that, I think he has a successful presidency. The only thing I've heard so far that I'm somewhat concerned about is $1 trillion in infrastructure, because I think the bureaucracy ends up wasting, 40 cents at least on every dollar.
Well, I think that if we look, I think both in terms of building the wall and in terms of rebuilding the American military, recapitalizing the Navy and the Air Force, and in terms of an infrastructure plan, President-elect Trump should be developing sort of his set of guidelines and insist on a reform plan, not just a spending plan. I mean, you're exactly right, and there's a real expert on this named Philip Howard who has done tremendous work, and he believes that you could cut half the cost out of the system by getting rid of totally unnecessary regulatory bureaucracies and letting people go to work actually building things. And we spend so much time and money nowadays studying. You see this happening right now in North Dakota on this pipeline issue. You get into all of this lawsuits and then demonstrations and then this and then that. I think that's part of what I mean by really bearing down and saying, what are the principles we're going to run this country by? And one of those principles has to be some level of competent effectiveness.
Well, I think that's basic, and I do think deficits matter. I do think debt matters. I think that's something we've got to pay attention to. I mean, the president's, we have tried over and over again the so-called government stimulus plan, and I'm not disputing that our infrastructure is crumbling, that our airports need to be rebuilt, bridges and roads are a mess in a lot of states and cities. But I'd rather see the.
But let me give you two pay-fors, and you will remember because you were there that I am the only Speaker of the House in your lifetime to balance the federal budget. So I'm interested in balancing the budget. I think we can balance the budget. But I'm going to give you two pay-fors for infrastructure. One is to pass the tax incentive bill to bring home the $2 trillion plus that is overseas. That would generate a one-time payment that would be quite substantial. And second would be to open up federal lands, not the national parks, but federal lands in general, to
sell them.
Energy and to minerals. That would generate over a decade probably more than enough money for $1 trillion infrastructure program.
I totally agree. And in the meantime, it would also create jobs, and it would get people out of poverty, off of food stamps, and paying taxes again, which, by the way, is all a lot of the people want. I think there's a real reason. When you talk about repatriation, I know that the president-elect has talked about a 10% rate. What if he made it 5% if you would invest X millions of dollars in factories and manufacturing centers in those most depressed areas in the country, which we can identify?
I think that sort of thinking could become very creative. We want to rebuild Detroit. We want to rebuild Baltimore. We want to rebuild Appalachia. And remember that the great tidal wave that elected President-elect Trump came out of rural America, and we need to have a contract with rural America to think through what do they need so that they can have jobs so their kids can stay home and still be able to come by for Sunday lunch. I mean, there are lots of places in America where there's a very strong sense of family and of neighborhood and of community, and the left has just run over it.
I love the fact, I think what you do best, one of the things over the many years I've known you is when you go on vacation, you come back brimming with good ideas, and the vast majority of them are really good. And so I'm listening to you, and what I'm hearing is you're going to take on the role of looking at the big picture for every department and every aspect of government, which I think is a good idea. What do you make of the reaction by the left to the election of Donald Trump? I mean, on college campuses, you have professors providing cry rooms and pet therapy and hot cocoa to the poor little students that are so upset. And
the other day, I didn't believe you initially when you said.
What did you think? I lied about that?
But I was telling you about Wake Forest, which had aromatherapy. Pay a massive tuition, and you too can have aromatherapy. I mean, this is just, it tells you how how much we need to rethink the American university scene, how soft and how isolated from reality it has gotten. We got a nice note from...
By the way, I really, you know what my favorite is, though? They're giving kids in college Play-Doh and coloring books.
Is that right?
I swear, I'm not making it up. I'm not making any... Why do you not believe me? You've known me all these years. I don't make stuff up.
It's just so stupid you can't, it's not that you're saying it. It's the whole concept of,
I swear.
How can you be a college student and not be offended?
I know. Could you imagine a cry room? Hang on, I'm having a bad day. My ratings sucked yesterday. Let me go cry in my cry room. I mean, good grief.
Well, we had one of our former interns write us and sent us an email, and she said, all over America, people got up on Wednesday morning and went to work, but not at my university.
That's hilarious.
She said, here we were too sensitive to undertake just doing our job.
How are these people going to function in real life with all the difficulties that that everybody in life faces? I don't know how they'll get by.
Listen, that's why they're desperate for tenure for faculty and why they're desperate for the civil service not to be responsible, because where do you think these people go?
Let me ask you, what do you think so far of the selections? I mean, you've got Reince Bannon and Jeff Sessions and General Flynn, and you still have Secretary of Defense open and Secretary of State open and some other high positions. And I don't know why I keep hearing the name Mitt Romney. I mean, why would you pick somebody that called you a huckster and a fraud and a phony? It's inexplicable.
I think in the end it'll be very hard for Romney to survive. People just looking at the videotapes. I mean, I think the people who voted for Donald J. Trump voted for him to clean out the swamp, and I don't think somehow that Mitt's going to fit that. But I thought, first of all, that it was absolutely perfect to have both Bannon and Reince, because Steve Bannon is a hardcore, solid conservative, intellectually very smart.
I gotta run here, but I really appreciate everything you've been doing. I'm really looking forward to see a transformation occur, and I think this is an opportunity that we have not had in so many years, and for that I have a lot of hope that we can do it right. Mr. Speaker, thank you.
It's going to be great.
All right.